My motif from Invisible Man is history. History is used very profoundly throughout this novel to accentuate I.M.'s progress and self-discovery, his understanding of authenticity and conformity, and to really unite separate events together with a similar message. History is used to convey the main message that in life one cannot know where he is going if he does not know where he has been, and in life he cannot know who he is if he does not know who he was. To ignore our history is to ignore who we are. Throughout the novel, I.M. goes from living with the white man's version of history, which was just to ignore it, to learning to plunge outside of that idea. My first quote is from chapter 1 on page 15, where Invisible Man says, "I am not ashamed of my grandparents for having been slaves. I'm only ashamed of myself for having at one time been ashamed." Invisible Man speaks here reflecting on his past. Throughout the novel and most of his life, he struggled with accepting his history and its significance to who he is. He finally learned to embrace it and portrays that here as he states he regrets ignoring it and shutting it out. My second quote is kind of a long passage of Brother Jack speaking to I.M. in chapter 13 on page 291. Here, Invisible Man listens to Brother Jack to try to convince him to conform to the Brotherhood's misguided view of what history is. I.M. tries to explain his love for old black people who represent his history, childhood, and culture, and Jack refutes all of that, deeming it irrelevant to the brighter future important men such as themselves will create together. My third quote is from chapter 14 on page 307, where Brother Jack is speaking to I.M. about history again and how it must be changed through him. This reference to history by Brother Jack shows that the recording of history is mainly controlled by those in power and those in charge, drowning out the importance of everyday people's voices. Just as Booker T. Washington's ideals of very slowly unsegregating and sticking mainly to conformity prevailed, Brother Jack wants to use I.M. to change history more drastically toward that conformity. He plans to puppeteer I.M. as a leader, like Washington, of his people to the Brotherhood's advantage. My fourth example will be from chapter 18, page 392, where a member of the Brotherhood tells I.M., "I don't think we ought to have such things," referring to a chain link from slavery times. "I don't think we ought to dramatize our differences." In this instance, the chain link I.M. showed his brother represents history, specifically slavery and black culture. The fact that the member was disgusted by it shows that he is disgusted by their history altogether. Ignoring and avoiding history eliminates individuality, promoting conformity, which is exaggerated by his words, "I don't think we ought to dramatize over differences," meaning he thinks we should all be the same. My fifth example is from chapter 20, page 439, a longer passage where I.M. is really opening his eyes to the lies the Brotherhood has fed him. Here he realizes that the true heroes, the Todd Cliftons, the vets, the grandfathers, will never be recorded in the history because the keeper's lies will always prevail. The whites in power control what is recorded. He learns that to plunge out of that history is a good thing and would be to find his true self. My sixth example will be from chapter 21 on pages 457 through 458. During I.M.'s eulogy, he explains again more explicitly how losing sense of one's history is to lose sense of oneself. Clifton had been a part of the brainwashing Brotherhood most of the time, but just recently left them, only to promote racist Sambo dolls on street corners. He lost his history and himself, especially his grip on reality. Now he was dead, proving the importance of awareness of our roots and who we are. The last example I will be using for this motif is from the epilogue, specifically on page 577. At this point, I.M. has been through Clifton's death, Raz's riots, and his discovery of his invisibility. The motif and the theme behind it still remain. In this quote, I.M. describes how he finds it amusing to watch both races struggle to find their identities as they run from their histories and cultures, specifically blacks as they chase whiteness, stifling their histories and becoming ugly, dull, gray, lost beings. Throughout this novel, the central theme, the motif of history best develops is the theme that in life, avoiding assimilation to one's surroundings and to the ideals of society, and by remaining authentic in a world of forced sameness, is how to discover yourself and your true identity.